Today we're going to go over the British Grand Prix 2023 qualifying session data analysis. So here you look at the gaps between the drivers in the qualifying session in British Grand Prix 2023. Obviously Verstappen got the pole, and unfortunately Kevin Magnussen failed to mark any fast lap in the qualifying session because I think his engine was blown and he didn't get a decent lap. So I didn't actually include Kevin Magnussen in this graph because it would make everything squashed, and it's hard to really analyze the time gap between the drivers if we had Magnussen in this graph. Okay, so Max Verstappen recorded 1 minute 20 second 0.720 as the fastest lap and got the pole position. And briefly, the surprise was that Perez again didn't proceed to Q2 and he was dropped in Q3. Another thing was that two McLarens got P2 and P3. Norris got P2, the front row, and Piastri got P3, which was probably the best position, starting grid for him as a rookie. Actually, Tsunoda got P4 in. No, it's not P4. It was P4 in the finishing in 2021. No, it's not Saudi Arabia. Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, but he didn't get a decent qualifying result. So probably Piastri has got the best starting grid ever in the rookie from these 5 or so years, I would say. And Ferrari didn't show a great performance. They showed the great performance, but they didn't get P2 and P3. Mercedes looks like regaining their power due to the update, I guess. And Aston Martin didn't show their prominent strength. They didn't either show the strength in Austria. We have thought that was because that track, track layouts or so, and we thought Aston Martin would be back stronger in Silverstone for their car features and things like that, high downforce, higher speed in the slower speed corners and things like that, but they didn't show a particular strength in Silverstone qualifying session. Albon was qualified in P7. That was remarkable for a 2023 Williams car, even though Logan Sargent, another rookie, dropped in Q2. That is my impression in the British Grand Prix 2023 qualifying session. Well, let's go over that data. So here you see the huge gaps between Sargent and Bottas, and another huge gap between Gasly and Hülkenberg. This is because Bottas didn't actually run a fast lap, a quick lap in Q2, even though Bottas made it through Q3. This was because Bottas has got the engine power off in the end of the Q3 after he actually recorded the quick lap, so he didn't run the quick lap in Q2. So this is just showing his Q3 fastest lap. And another thing here, probably the most prominent and the biggest gap between Gasly and Hülkenberg. Actually, Gasly was P10 and proceeded through Q2, and Gasly reached Q3, and Hülkenberg didn't. So this is the gap between Q2 and Q3, and the reason why we got this huge gap was because of the weather, temperature, and DRS. So let's look at the truck temperature and air temperature next. So this is roughly where they started the Q3 at a 1 hour, and this is where they started the Q1, and this is roughly where they started Q2, I guess. I remember, yeah. So you remember in the Q1 there was a spitting on the truck, and there was actually a discussion between the drivers and the engineers in the pit wall whether they have to get the intermediate tire or the dry tire. So that's why FIA actually decided not to disable the DRS. So the first factor to have this much huge gap between Q2 and Q3 fastest time was because all drivers in Q3 has got the DRS when they recorded their fastest laps. The second reason that they got this huge time gap between the drivers in Q2 and Q3 was because the track temperature rose really aggressively. The weather has actually improved throughout the qualifying session, especially between Q2 and Q3, so the tire warmed up better and faster cornering speed, better traction in the exit of the corner, and better braking speed, better braking distance, I would say. So these factors all adds up for drivers in Q3, and this match gap has been produced. Of course, Silverstone is a really aggressive circuit because they have lots of fast corners like Maggots, Beckett, Chapel, and Corpse, and they also have the slow speed corners, even though it's not really a big portion of the circuit. They need the better traction, of course, like any other circuits. So air temperature is really a huge matter for this circuit. So let's look at a remarkable result from Albon and Logan Sargent. Alex Albon actually finished in P7. He's got a remarkable final lap in Q3, and he popped up to P7 from the P8 from P10. And Logan Sargent made it through Q2, but he didn't make it through Q3. So there should be a huge time gap when Albon and Sargent, because Albon has got the better track temperature and DRS, while Sargent didn't get either. So, of course, here the speed throughout the positions in the track, the x-axis shows distance and the y-axis shows the speed on track. Albon should get the better traction and better brake, better cornering speed and things like that. So the top speed should change, but he's got a better top speed, better fast cornering speed due to track temperature, but he's overall got a great result. Probably the thing that we should see is over here, the throttle. These should be the area where we got Max Specs Chapel, so the fast cornering speed corners. However, Albon didn't lift his gas, and he's got the faster cornering speed around these areas even little. So it's here and here. This should be this corner over here. He's got a better cornering speed, of course, because the RPM was higher and gear choice wasn't changed compared to Logan Sargent. So he's got the better cornering speed in the slower corner over here. Even though the brake didn't look really different between Albon and Sargent, Albon clearly showed later braking. Here. No here though. Yeah. And for the gear selections, Albon showed a better traction, faster shift up, and later shift down, which means he's got better brakings and better tractions, because faster shifting up shows faster engine rev going up, and later shift down shows later braking. Thus, he retains the engine rev longer on the straight or wherever on the track. So even though Albon has competed in Q3, which was in a better track temperature, track condition, and with the DRS, Albon showed a remarkable driving technique. Okay, so the next is the comparison between Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen, because I would like to show this because Perez and Norris, Verstappen, they got the same cars. However, Perez didn't show a great result these days like he did last year around this time. And many people, rumors about Sergio Perez sucked and Sergio Perez replaced by some other drivers like Liam Lawson, Yuki Tsunoda from AlphaTauri, or Daniel Ricciardo from AlphaTauri again. He was announced to join and replace AlphaTauri with Nick de Vries, the old rookie from the Netherlands. I'm so sorry for Nick de Vries that he couldn't race and that he couldn't drive in his country, in Netherlands. Whatever, let's get through the Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen lap comparison. So the deeper blue shows Max Verstappen and purple line shows Sergio Perez telemetry. So what we see over here in the speed section is that Sergio Perez has got the slower top speed, and the cornering speed doesn't really change, but here the cornering speed at probably the slower corner in the later sections in the circuit changed. Here, Sergio Perez got slower speed here and here as well. Well, probably the reason why this happened was because Max Verstappen proceeded to Q21, which DRS was enabled, and the track temperature was better compared to Q3, which Sergio Perez only raced in Q3. So the track condition and other conditions were not the same for these two drivers, but still this shows a significant difference between Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. What I would like to see here is these gear choices. Clearly, Max Verstappen shifted earlier before or on the straight, showing that he's maintained a longer and faster speed on the straight. And he sometimes showed later shift downs, showing that he's got the better braking and he's got the better entry to the corner. And the remarkable thing is over here. So this shows the home straight, and this one is the start finishing line. Even though Sergio Perez has showed slower brake, he's got this engine revs and speed not going so high, even on the straight. This would probably show that he's got probably the worst exit at the final corner before the start finish line. This shouldn't typically change throughout the track condition. This might change if it rained, but it wasn't raining in Q3 and it was dry, so this speed shouldn't that much change, especially we shouldn't see this drop. So Sergio Perez probably here shows a mismatch between his driving style and the car setting. But Max Verstappen, people often say he prefers a aggressive car, rear instability cars, which means that car often gets a oversteer, which shows the rear slides too aggressive, and the front turns in better than the understeering cars, which Sergio Perez doesn't really prefer. Sergio Perez prefers the the rear stable cars and has better traction, so that he can step on the gas pedal more aggressively, and he's got the better exit, or we don't say easier exits, but what would you call? The drivers can be more confident in the exit of the corner with the understeering cars. However, oversteering cars, you should be really sensitive on the gas throttle, and it's depending on the drivers which cars to pick up, either whether the understeering or oversteering cars. So I actually wanted to show this plot, the fastest lap comparison in the race between Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen, because the track condition during the qualifying session in Q3 and Q1 were different. So we needed the equal condition to compare the pace or driving styles between these two drivers. However, we can see that this is massively changed. It looks like Max lifted off quite early, even before he actually entered the corner, and he's maintained slightly faster cornering speed and slower straight speed, faster cornering speed again and again. This was probably because Max had a confidence in his driving style that he can get the fastest lap, even though he has saved the tire so that he can go faster, but he can still save the tires. This means Max Verstappen really matches the car better than Sergio Perez did. Let's look at this later break. Sometimes early break, but overall, he's maintained the faster cornering speed. And remarkable thing is that he didn't use the top gears for the straights. This is probably because he picked up higher engine revs over the tire lives and things like that. And he often gets a better traction over the corner exits. So what we can see from here is clearly Max matches the car better, or Red Bull builds the car more suitable for Max Verstappen and not really for Sergio Perez. Obviously, because Sergio Perez is a second driver, Max Verstappen is a defending champion, former Drivers' Championship winner for 2 years in a row. So, it's typical for Red Bull to build a car suiting better for Max Verstappen, but Sergio Perez is clearly struggling with that. And Daniel Ricciardo actually matched the car in Red Bull from his careers in Red Bull, showing that maybe Daniel Ricciardo will be back in Red Bull and he may be able to show his great ability in this Red Bull car. Okay, so let's look at another plot, which was between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, because Norris showed a great performance in the qualifying session in his McLaren car, what we supposed to be a slower car, because McLaren didn't show a strong performance earlier in the season, and they often ended up in Q3, and they often ended up non-point finishers. However, this time Norris reached to the P2 and Piastri to P3. So this is let's start with this. So this is the speed, engine rev, gear choice, throttle, and brake telemetry between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Lando Norris in orange and Max Verstappen in blue from the qualifying fastest lap. So they are in equal condition, equal track temperature, and equal DRS condition. So what we can see from here is Lando Norris actually has got probably the slower top speed, but he has got faster cornering speed at the lowest point at the apex zone. And he sometimes got a better traction through the corner exit, or he at least matches the corner exit with Max Verstappen. Engine rev is not really what we are able to see to compare between the two drivers. Rather, we can see the driving style difference between the two drivers, because engine rev really depends on the gear pickup and things like that, and this should be depending on the engine supplier, the gear ratio, and the car characteristics and things like that. So we don't say which driver is more superior or so due to RPM and gear ratio or gear pickup. However, here Lando Norris shows layered shift down which means the better braking into the corner. And he also shows the faster shift up, which shows a better traction exit the corner over here. Or probably it shows better exit of the car, better exit, better traction of the car, not really the driver probably. Here later brake, earlier throttle lift off, which probably shows he's got a tire life saving over here. And here he actually picked up the lowest gear, the first gear in the bottom corner, so that the RPM goes higher, and ended up matching the cornering speed with Max Verstappen, which probably shows the car difference between the McLaren and the Red Bull cars. Overall, Lando Norris has got faster shift up and quicker shift up and quicker shift down compared to Max Verstappen, showing that there are different car settings or different car concepts. And let's get back to the speed telemetry. Lando Norris actually showed a faster cornering speed, slowest cornering speed. This is probably showing that the McLaren develops the car better in the slower corner, and seeing that the fastest speed on the straight are sometimes slower in McLaren car than in Red Bull car, and this probably shows McLaren has better cornering speed with more drags, while Red Bull has less drag with slower cornering speed. I didn't really go over McLaren's vehicle dynamics, like the suspension layouts and things like that, so I can't really see a definite thing, absolute thing, but this may show the difference between the McLaren car concepts and Red Bull car concepts. And let's get to the gear pickups on the circuit. Actually, here is the start finish line, and here is the start finish line for Max Verstappen, and here for Lando Norris on the right side. So probably the first remarkable thing is over here. Even though Max Verstappen turns or drives throughout the corner with the fourth gear, Lando Norris actually used the third gear, which probably means he probably used a engine brake or things like that to get through the corner. But in the end, they matched the same gear pickup in the beginning of the straight. And throughout the Baggett Chapel and after the corpse, this over here is a remarkable change for Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. Norris clearly shifted down earlier than Max Verstappen did in this tight sections, and he matched up with the sixth gear with Max Verstappen in the end, so as the corner following that and the straight following the tight section, which probably means that Lando Norris used more engine brakes throughout the corner rather than braking, and try to match up the speed throughout the tighter corners, tighter sections. And here is the speed plot on the track. Here is the start finish line, and left side we see Max Verstappen, and on the right hand we see the Lando Norris plot. The speed doesn't really show the difference between the two drivers, even though we saw a significant difference between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris on the gear shift on track. That means that also supports the conclusion or hypothesis that the Red Bull and McLaren cars are differently developed. Well, so overall, Max Verstappen and Norris, they matched the fastest lap time. However, depending on how McLaren develops the car, we would see a greater change towards the end of the season between McLaren and Red Bull. And Albon was a great driving. Albon again showed his great performance over his rookie teammate. And Max Verstappen showed better match to the car over his teammate Sergio Perez. Well, thanks for watching, and please keep updated with my F1 data analysis. Thank you.